Welcome back to a brand new video from the shed end with myself, T.Dot. As always, thank you very much for joining me. Now, before we get into today's video, please go and subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments as well. And don't forget to like this video as well. Breaking news apparently being reported by David Ornstein from The Athletic. Frank Lampard, surprise, surprise, out of nowhere, is in talks of becoming an interim manager at Chelsea till the end of the season. There is still obviously talks going on with Julian Nagelsmann and obviously Luis Enrique. But Frank Lampard back at Stamford Bridge for a second spell. How do I feel about that? Well, I'm going to be honest. I personally am not 100% sure this even makes sense. We had Graham Potter in charge. Bruno's obviously in charge now as well. And I'm not really sure what direction we're trying to go in with bringing Frank Lampard back into the fold. Is it maybe just to bring some more unity and, I don't know, maybe get the fans back on board, get some of the players that have probably had a bit of disruption in the dressing room, maybe get them back on board, maybe bring John Terry into the fold as well. I'm not sure what's going on with the club, but it does seem like at the moment there's chaos. Let's call it chaos. That's what it is. You know, we've gone from Graham Potter being in charge last week, Saturday, Graham Potter being sacked. Then all of a sudden, we've been linked with Julian Nagelsmann. Then we're getting Luis Enrique coming over from Spain to have talks with the owners. And then out of nowhere, Frank Lampard, who was at the game yesterday. So it does make sense, you know, Frank Lampard being at the game. You know, it makes complete sense, perfect sense. But I just don't get it. I don't get it. Let's see what The Athletic have got to say about this. I'm going to post this now. So Chelsea are close to a deal to appoint Frank Lampard as the new head coach on an interim basis until the end of the season. The West London club are working on an agreement which would see Lampard, who was at Stamford Bridge on Tuesday night to watch Chelsea draw 0-0 with Liverpool, return 2 years after leaving. Lampard has been out of work since being sacked by Everton in January. He previously managed Chelsea from July 2019 to January 2021 before being sacked and replaced by Thomas Tuchel. An exhaustive search for a permanent successor to Graham Potter continues in the weeks ahead. The search for Chelsea's new head coach is being led by club's co-sporting directors Lawrence Stewart and Paul Winstanley before a decision is ultimately made by co-owners Todd Bowley and Bedad Egbali. The Athletic reported on Tuesday that Brighton and Hove Albion's Roberto De Zerbi is not in the running for the next Chelsea to be the next Chelsea manager. Luis Enrique, Julian Nagelsmann, fresh from being sacked from Bayern Munich, have both been linked to the Chelsea vacancy. Bruno Solter, who was previously a member of Potter's coaching staff at Brighton Albion, and then Chelsea, took charge of West London side for the draw with Liverpool. Chelsea are next in action at Wolverhampton Wanderers on Saturday. They're 11th in the Premier League and face Champions League quarter-final first leg against Real Madrid next week. So, with that being said, I mean, we're talking about a man that failed at Chelsea first time round. He went to Everton and failed there. And for all of that, we're now bringing him back to Stamford Bridge. It's a crazy move. I can see why the owners have done it. It's a familiar face around the dressing room. I sort of spoke about that earlier in my live stream about John Terry being a familiar face, but you do have to think about the football under Frank Lampard. And yes, he obviously got way more better players than he did. First time round. Obviously he had a transfer ban the previous time he was here. He went on to sign certain players. I think even he was here for Timo Werner, Kai Havertz, Christian Pulisic, maybe Hakim Ziyech as well. They were all signed under him, I think, as well. If you think back to that season, how well we kind of started and how quick it deflated. And I think he got sacked after an FA Cup game, if I'm not mistaken. He made Mason Mount captain. I feel like it might have been Luton, but I might be wrong. Whoever it was, you know, he got sacked after that game, even though we won. The decision was already made by Roman Abramovich to sack him. So round two does not fill me with any joy. My worry is that Lampard potentially could go on to do really well this interim basis and maybe even go on to win the Champions League. Now, if he does that, how do you sack a man that's won you the Champions League? Your first real season as owners, you win the Champions League. You can't really sack Frank Lampard. So then what does that mean for Julian Nagelsmann? What does it mean for Luis Enrique? There's so many unanswered questions, and in my opinion we would have been easier, smarter to either carry on with Graham Potter. You know, the season was coming to an end in 9 games time. Yes, we do have the Champions League games as well, but what difference in terms of experience does Frank Lampard have to Graham Potter? Bruno Salter, as I've said, is in the job. Yes, he's only been coaching for 4 years, but on an interim basis, surely it makes sense just to have someone that's either at the club now or someone that you've employed already in Graham Potter. I don't necessarily see this change working for Frank Lampard. Yes, it's a club legend. Yes, he's been a brilliant player, brilliant servant to Chelsea. But in terms of managerial, you look back at Derby, he didn't get them promoted. You look at Chelsea, it fell to pieces in the second season under Frank Lampard. You look at his time at Everton, it hasn't really worked out, and it's a massive gamble. It is a massive gamble. You look at some of the players, you look at Lukaku, he's obviously on loan, but if Frank Lampard does this eventually go on to become the permanent manager, that's something I spoke about in the live stream earlier. You got to think about him. Mason Mount was one of his favourites, so you would expect if he does get the managerial job on an interim basis, Mason Mount's back in the fold. What does that mean for some of the other players? How does he fit Mason Mount into a team where, you've got João Felix playing relatively well, Raheem Sterling's in that team now, you've got Madueke, you've got Mudryk, Pulisic, Kai Havertz. You've still got to fit all these players in, and Mason Mount will be one of those players that he will want to have in his starting 11. So yeah, it took me by surprise. I'm sure we'll hear more over the next couple of days or so. But Frank Lampard at Chelsea, yes, he'll win the fans over. Yes, this is what Todd Bowley's probably trying to do in terms of making sure that the fans are back on board after the Graham Potter saga and how that went in the end. But it's a risky one. If he does well, how do you sack him? And if he does really poor, what was the point in sacking Graham Potter? What was the point in demoting Bruno out of that position of interim? It doesn't really make sense. And obviously, I think Julian Nagelsmann has said that he wants the whole summer off, the remaining part of this season off to be able to then come into the job in the summer and pick it up then. So that is a good bonus if we do have Lampard, and maybe we do still try and pursue Nagelsmann or Luis Enrique as the Athletic are reporting. But you do have to wonder if this is maybe Frank Lampard's opportunity to prove that he is one of those managers that does want to manage at the top level. If he does do well, he's got no excuse now. He's got some really good players at the club. You would have to think if he can't do anything with these players, bearing in mind, they should run through brick walls for him, seeing as he's a Chelsea legend, then you do have to question whether Frank Lampard is cut out to be a manager. Should he be a coach, an ambassador, a technical director of some sort, or whatever the role is, but is he fit to be a manager? If he doesn't work here now, it's a massive blemish again on his CV as well. Where does he go after this? If it's only an interim, so many questions to ask, so many things that don't really make sense. But the owners seem to think they know best. Hopefully they get Luis Enrique or Julian Nagelsmann signed up whilst this interim position is being looked after by Frank Lampard or whoever. We want someone in. I think I said earlier, I want someone in who's coming early into the pre-season, if not before, to assess things, very similar to how Erik ten Hag came into his job after Ralf Rangnick left as well. I'd love that situation because it seems to have worked for United. So we need to try and do that. But yeah, I don't see this working out really for the club or for Frank Lampard. But I hope I'm wrong. And I hope people in the comments can try and justify why we've gone back for Frank Lampard. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that Linktree link in the description as well. I'm sure we'll hear more about this story over the next 24 to 48 hours. There is talk that he's meant to be in charge before the Wolves game, so we're going to hear a lot more about that over the next coming days. This has been T.Dot from the Shed End. Until next time, thank you very much for watching.